Filmmakers, it's time to use Soldo. Soldo is a payment solution that replaces petty cash given to employees and production assistants when in prep, on set, or in post-production. Soldo is a multi-user expense account that helps you control business spending. You can give Soldo cards to some or every employee, to entire teams or even contractors instantly. Transfer funds to all card holders. And you can use Soldo for free for 3 months with the code FilmmakersPod. Soldo.com. Listen for more info in today's episode of the Filmmakers Podcast.
The Podfix Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 277 of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk
filmmaking.
From indie film to studio films to TV and
everything in between.
How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to
F it up.
In a very, very humble opinion. I am Giles Alderson, and joining me today is Matthew Butler-Hart and Tori Butler-Hart. Hello.
Hello, Giles. And hello, everyone. Thanks for having us back.
An absolute pleasure to have you back, and we are back together because we have on the legend. That is Stephen Fry. And he was brought to us because you know Stephen Fry. You are acquainted with him. He's also in your amazing book, Full to the Brim, with Fizz, Ginger, and Fierce Determination. It is out now in all good and evil newsagents and stores and bookshops.
Did you say good and evil?
Yes, I did.
Bookshops.
Yes. Some of them are evil.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's an empire thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was involved in your amazing film, Two Down.
Yeah. He basically
one of our
he was kind of our main
producers.
one of our executive producers. Yeah, which is great. I mean, you know, you just sort of send in the script, lovely, and that was basically it. Any notes? Oh, lovely. Fantastic. That's the kind of producer you want.
That's the producer you want.
Yeah, well, exactly. Money producer.
Money producer, great.
Yeah.
So we've got Stephen Fry on, who's obviously ridiculously well known. I do introduce him at the start of the podcast, but let's name some of his amazing credits, shall we?
I mean, from an acting point of view, sure. Well, for me, Blackadder. We don't even talk about Blackadder. But I mean, yeah, and well, as you'll find out, his brain is just so full of amazing things.
Yeah, we had so many questions, didn't we, that we wanted to ask him.
Yeah.
Pages and pages of notes that we'd both done, and he just goes on this wonderful intellectual journey about filmmaking and his world within it.
You can listen to him for hours.
And many people have, because he's narrated so many amazing audiobooks. Great link there, wasn't it? Including the Harry Potter franchise. But he's also known for Gosford Park, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Hobbit, Jeeves and Wooster, bit of Fry and Laurie, Gosford Park, V for Vendetta, Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows. Do you know what I mean? Incredible. He's Golden Globe nominated for Wild. We didn't even talk about that.
I know, we didn't talk about Wild. The part that was made for him, Oscar Wilde, and he's fantastic.
And he was even sitting in the background.
There's a little picture of Oscar Wilde. I know.
I've got an Oscar Wilde book behind me he didn't even comment on, and Stephen Fry's book, More For Me, was behind me as well. But why would he, and why should he? He's a living legend, and we talked deep into mental health in filmmaking. We talked about what it's like on set, directing, why he hasn't necessarily directed again, his love of writing and acting. I mean, gosh, what is not to love about this?
So much.
So disappointed when he went, I should get to my other meeting. And we're like, no, really? People love you, Stephen. He's also in TV shows at the moment, Masters of the Universe, The Dropout, Sex Education. So he's like I say, an icon, living legend. It's a Sin as well. He's in that.
Busy man.
Got a new Netflix show, The Sandman, coming out soon, which looks awesome.
And also, one of his books is...
Yeah, which we didn't even talk about, like one of his books, The Liar.
So much we didn't talk about, but we have mentioned it here, so you do know about it now, and just know that he's an amazing guy. We will put links to everything we can in the show notes, so you can go get them, including Matt and Tori's amazing book, Full to the Brim, with Fizz, Ginger, and Fierce Determination.
Such a long title.
Which is amazing. Some amazing people feature in this book. Stephen Fry, Ian McKellen.
Charles
Hey! Same joke every time, but it's worth it. So listen, the Cannes Film Festival is starting this week. And myself, Tori and Matt, we're going to be there, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we have written up a blog for you, How to Survive and Thrive in Cannes, with so many do's and don'ts. And we've asked some of our hosts and some of our previous guests to contribute to that blog. Link to that is in the show notes, but here's some tidbits from it. Carry sun cream, so important, a phone charger, an umbrella, and a spare shirt in your bag, and make sure you have a pen and paper with you at all times. And after you've met someone cool, you've exchanged business cards, because make sure you've got them, write a little note about what that discussion was, because when you get home a week later, you'll have 60 to 200 business cards, believe me, you will, and you won't remember Larry from Barry or Sue from Rue. You won't. So if you write a little note, and that's what you can lead with in your email to them a week after the festival. There are so many more tips and tricks, like wear good shoes. There's so many important things like that. We will see you out there. Do come and introduce yourselves. We'd love that. So if you're going out there just to meet people, brilliant. Be brave, introduce yourself, ask them about them. Hopefully you've researched them beforehand, even if it's looking them up on IMDb or looking at Sinando account or asking someone else who they are and quickly Googling, because then you've got a reason to go up and talk to them and to ask them about their projects and about their films, and hopefully the conversation will come back round to you. If you're going there with a project, again, do the same thing, and eventually you will talk about your projects. But above all, enjoy yourselves, and I will do a live intro from there next week, so I'll tell you all about how we're getting on with selling 3-Day Millionaire and Food for Thought documentary, and I'll see the teaser trailers for Wolves of War and The Stranger in Our Bed, which will be in the markets. How exciting. Huge shout out to some of our latest Patreon supporters. Lee Hutchings, Lynn Coleman, Dean, Jason McColgan and Marli J Monroe, just to name a few. Thank you so much for supporting. We have so much extra footage on there. We have so many extra clips and interviews and chat on there. You want to support this podcast? Then go there and support that way. A link to that is in the show notes. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy our amazing chat with the wonderful Mr.
Stephen Fry.
How is he not a dame? How is he not a star?
How is he not a dame?
I wonder if he's turned things down. I don't know.
I think he's turned it down because I searched that because I was like, why is he not? Yeah. I was going to put that in my intro and I thought, don't, because he might go, well, actually.
Yeah.
And in fact, he kind of does it anyway when he says, I'm going to correct you. I thought, oh shit, this is really embarrassing. What have I done? I know, and it wasn't bad at all. So yeah, sit back and relax and enjoy a lovely chat. Myself, Matthew Butler Hart, Tori Butler Hart, chatting with the amazing Stephen Fry.
Enjoy.
Hello. Here we are.
Right. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
We're very, very
enjoying my new studio display screen because it's got this ability to pan with you.
I thought you were doing that. That's amazing.
It's panning with you as you move. That's really cool.
What is that? I want that.
It's the Apple Studio Display.
So you might know Stephen Fry as the voice of Harry Potter audiobooks, as the former presenter of QI, or as General Melchet in Blackadder, or maybe you have read one of his recent books on the Greek myths, or his amazing trilogy of biographies. He is one of Britain's best-loved actors. He's also a comedian, presenter, author, screenwriter, and director. He is known the world over for his achievements in the arts, his fight for LGBTQ rights, and he's now the president of the MCC. It is the national treasure, the living icon, Stephen Fry on the Filmmakers Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Though I have to correct you on a slight point. It's tediously pedantic of me, but I'm the president designate of the MCC. My term doesn't start till October the 1st, and the wonderful Claire Connor is the current president. The first woman president.
Well, I have to say, Stephen, my father specifically said, when I said that I was speaking to you, he said, please will you pass on my congratulations to him.
He's very excited.
He is very excited, and he thinks you are
thank
perfect.
You. Those who understand, many others think it's the most ludicrous and weird and meaningless thing imaginable, which is what they think of cricket generally. But as for the dusty byways of clubs and their 300-year-old history or whatever, I can understand why it isn't everybody's test-a-tay.
Yeah, test, literally, to take. Now, interestingly, there hasn't been that many films about cricket, has there?
No.
Not too many.
No. There's The Last Test, which was written by Terence Rattigan, the great playwright Terence Rattigan, and stars Jack Warner and Robert Morley. And it's about a professional cricketer, kind of Jack Hobbs type. Because, one of the extraordinary things about cricket is how it's a window onto the world and how it began, as an English country game. And then as England and Britain changed and became a colonial power, the game was taken around the world, like so much that was English. And so it has a colonial footprint, which is both, a terrible thing, a reminder of the weird way we thought we could just walk into people's countries and steal their belongings and tax them and basically quarry their minerals and generally impoverish them and enrich ourselves. We don't need to go into it. We all understand, I think, the dark side of colonialism and empire. But cricket might almost be regarded as an exemption, or something of which it's hard to use the word pride and colonialism in the same sentence. But it has given, around the world, enormous pleasure. And it has allowed those countries that are colonial and that have been under the heel of the empire to get their revenge by defeating us consistently. But even more weirdly, it was again right up into my lifetime. I mean, when I was able to understand cricket, there was still an annual match called Gentlemen v Players.
Wow.
In which amateurs, gentlemen, played the professional players. So in the last of the amateur and professional game, the Gentlemen v Players, famous players like Fred Truman, who was a professional, and Edridge, and it's just extraordinary to think of that. So things have changed. Anyway, that film is about a professional, a kind of Jack Hobbs figure, Jack Warner, and it's quite charming. It's quite sweet. And there are some Bollywood movies on cricket.
Yes, of course, because it's huge over in India.
That'd be fun.
And
It's
Pakistan,
the third
obviously.
religion of India after Islam and Hindu.
But now you are soon to be president, shall we say? Do you think, well, now you can say, okay, well, we can use the Oval, or we can use some of these places. Do you think that that's a chance for us to make a film about cricket? Is this something maybe that Stephen Fry might write? I don't know, I'm just throwing it in there.
It's an interesting idea. One of the deep problematic things about British movies is that how many of them are all the same. I mean, not yours, not all movies. There's a fantastic, thriving independent sector and some remarkable filmmakers. But so many of the movies that get signed off on are either about the Second World War, and I'm not throwing stones at or mud at any particular film, but I think we know the recent ones that have come and gone, some of them, or they're about a group of charming sort of working class people who have their great moment in the sun as their brass band or their naked calendar or their nudist show. They're all in that, aren't they? It's strange how many there are like that, and they're trying to follow an Ealing model of the late 40s and 50s, the great Ealing period under Michael Balkan, when films like Passport to Pimlico and the Titfield Thunderbolt, which were about the little person striking back against bureaucracy, against corporatism, against they were sort of part of that utopian socialism that followed the Second World War, and there is something very likable about them, their belief in the common man, but also not at the expense of eccentric, old-fashioned, usually played by Dennis Price or Alistair Sim or something.
Yeah, but we love those movies, and that's the thing I think about those Ealing comedies and those, the Richard Curtis comedy. We do love them as much as a lot of people fight against them. No, we hate these movies. Everyone watches Love Actually and loves it every Christmas. So a cricket version.
I beg to differ.
Oh, what? I love it.
We're in a different camp.
Yeah, different.
I know what you mean. A sort of like Bend It Like Beckham cricket equivalent would be wonderful. Yeah. Have you ever read
It would be interesting.
There's a book, Stephen, I don't know whether you've ever read it, called Rain Men. By Marcus Bergman.
No, I don't know it. Tell me
about it. It's a lovely book. It's been many years since I read it, but it's absolutely fantastic.
Is it by one of your dad's friends?
Dad played with him.
Okay.
This is not a shameless plug. Dad's mate's book. No, it is a lovely, lovely story. So yes, if you haven't read it, Rain Men is definitely worth
reading. Yeah, I'll go for it. Definitely.
There we go. I suppose one film that did use cricket to its great advantage is Shaun of the Dead, which used the cricket bat.
That's true.
A cricket bat
as a modern sort of take on it.
They plough a splendid furrow, that group, don't they? They're wonderful.
Wonderful, the Edgar Wrights. Do you prefer the voiceover side of work or interview side? Because your voiceover work is incredible, being the voice of Harry Potter or in Alice in Wonderland, things like that. And I suppose what it means to you, those two things.
I've always felt, essentially when I was very young and I wanted to be an actor, out of an excess of... there isn't really an opposite word to vanity, is there? But there was a kind of... I just so disliked how I looked and moved and everything to do with my body. I hated sport back then, can you imagine? Cricket was an exception, but I didn't, and I couldn't dance and couldn't throw or run or anything without colliding with a tree or something. And so all I felt I had was my mind and my voice, really. So I pictured if I was going to be an actor, I would probably be a radio actor or something like that. And I did picture doing, they weren't called audiobooks then, they were called, spoken books for the blind was basically the sector. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do that. I'll do it as a volunteer. I'll just read books into a microphone. I thought that sounded delicious.
Yes.
Because you don't need to put on costumes or makeup or look good. It's just you and an imaginary person in your ear, or you're in their ear, and I still love that. I love being that side of the glass in a studio. There's something very pleasing about it and the rhythm of it. But having said that, the joy of life is variety, and if I can, if I do several books, and during lockdown, I think I did 25 audiobooks for Audible, the audiobook company. I have a little sound sort of studio in my house in Norfolk, and so I was able to go there and sit myself down and read. So I did 15 P.G. Wodehouse, and I did some George Orwell and various others, and so that was really satisfying. But as soon as the lockdown freeze began to melt, I was very happy to do a couple of things in Vision. I did a Hulu, which is Disney Plus over here, called The Dropout, which I enjoyed enormously.
It's incredible.
Which we are watching at the moment.
Oh, are you? Yeah, it's quite something.
Yeah.
It's
it's fantastic.
It really is good, isn't it? And my role is very sad, unfortunately, as you will see.
We haven't finished.
I won't give anything away.
Don't give it away.
And I did a small part in a Netflix adaptation of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, which is due out at some point. I'm not quite sure when. And also I did a voice in a Netflix called Heartstopper, which is on at the moment and is absolutely charming, sweet schoolboy crush love story. It's absolutely divine and really, really lovely. Gosh, I would have loved that when I was a schoolboy myself. It would have made me feel much less annoyed with myself.
Speaking of that schoolboy thing or schoolgirl thing, it's, being the voice of the Harry Potter books, so many people have listened to your voice. And I remember listening to The Secret Seven and The Famous Five when I was a boy, and can still remember the sort of intro and the name of the person doing it, that whole intro bit. For you, how does that feel to be this voice?
It's amazing, really. People thank me for making their car journeys more bearable, keeping the children quiet.
Yes.
And someone shouted at me in the street once, "My children go to bed with you." And I thought that was probably not the best way of expressing what he was trying to express. But no, it's an extraordinary privilege to meet people who now, of course, fully adult, for whom listening to Harry Potter was an important part of their childhood, a really important part. Both, in some cases, it helped them enormously with their reading, funnily enough. It's kind of counterintuitive, but they said what they would do, a lot of children would listen and follow it in the book, with their finger on the lines. And that gave them a real sort of confidence. And they'd say, and I was always saying Hermione. I didn't realise it was Hermione, and things like that, which is so sweet. Of course, one of the exciting things was watching it all grow, because when I did the first book, there was just one book. And no one had heard the name J.K. Rowling or Harry Potter. It was just simply another gig, if you like, when you do this audiobook. And I realised they were utterly charming. And I said to Joe when we'd finished, I said, this is really good. I think it's going to be a great success. She said, thank you. As a matter of fact, I've already written a second, which will be coming out in 6 months' time. And she says, I said to her, good for you. Which sounds appallingly patronising. I can't believe I said it quite like that. But I liked to think that was encouraging and said, well, that's great, and of course, the second one, by the third, I was, if I'd go to a dinner party at a friend's house or something, and I'd say, oh, forgive me if I'm a bit hoarse. I've just been, finished my second day on a long children's book, and they go, oh, which one? And I'd say it's called Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. It's the third in a series. They go, oh, I've heard about. Is this the boy who becomes a wizard? And I go, yes. They go, oh, yeah, I've been reading about this. It's in the newspapers these days, and slowly one will become aware that it was becoming a complete phenomenon. And then she did her American tour, and it was just as big, if not bigger, in the United States, and of course had the usual mad people calling for the books and probably her to be burned, as they are now, weirdly enough, of course, but for different reasons. And so it was just marvellous to follow this phenomenon, the biggest literary phenomenon since Dickens, really, probably, in terms of sheer numbers.
And it was just another gig. I love that, because you've like you say, you've done loads of these.
Yes, I mean, it became then towards the last four of them, one couldn't read the manuscript or the first galley proofs as they're called, or the first printing, except under conditions of extreme security, because it started to enter a territory that no books enter, especially children's books. So I would go to the Bloomsbury, which was the publisher's offices then in Soho Square, and I'd be searched, and I'd go into a room where the manuscript was laid out, and I was allowed to take notes on, but they said they'd reserved the right to look through my notes on my way out, just on new characters that might come and voices I might use for them. Because by this time, of course, it wasn't so much that the fear of spoilers, although that was big, it was the fear of spoilers as far as bookmakers were concerned, because there was this whole thing about people betting on who was going to die and who was, all these different sorts. So, and that's not normal.
No, it's not. And did you ever feel aggrieved that you were never in them as well? Was there any?
No, I didn't actually. No,
right.
I mean, there was an inquiry for a part, and I wasn't able to do it. And who knows if it was anything more than just an inquiry? But I felt, well, I play all the characters, and that's extremely enjoyable, and I'm quite happy to do that. So it was fine. And they chose such wonderful people.
Yes, and you've worked with some amazing directors. Stephen Frears, the list goes on. David Yates, Tim Burton, John Schlesinger, Guy Ritchie, Robert Altman, Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Very fortunate. Well, not all fortunate or skilled, but what did you learn from working with those directors? Did you grow each time? Was there a thing where you thought, oh, I see what they're doing here?
Yes, I realised quite early on that the best directors are usually very quiet. If you visit a film set and you don't know what the director looks like, you can decide who they are because they're probably the person doing least. And that's a shock to some people. They think the director is shouting, and action, and all that sort of thing. And, it's usually the first assistant who does the shouting and the moving people around. The director might occasionally move from what's known as Video Village these days, the array of monitors with which they check out, because these days it's usually more than one camera. Not quite as many as you get in a TV studio, but you often have two and sometimes three cameras for an ordinary scene, and so there are the monitors and a nice comfy chair and some nibbles, and the director's there, and it's sometimes quite a long way away from the main action where the shooting's going on, and they might occasionally just sort of wander on and whisper to an actor or say a few words to an art director or the cinematographer, and then go back to their seat again, and then they'll say a few words after the first take or the first rehearsal. And that, when I first visited a set, or first was an actor on a set, was quite a shock. And it was actually when I was at Cambridge, when I was at university, I was an extra in Chariots of Fire, which was being shot there.
Not running, I take it.
No, not running. Definitely not running. Just playing some silly old student in the background here and there. But I was convinced that the assistant director, the first, was the director, because they were the ones shouting and telling everyone where to move and what to do and where to look, and it was every single direction was from that person. And then someone said, "Oh, that's the director there," and there was this person reading a newspaper, sitting in a chair. Huw Hudson, and I was completely baffled by this. I thought, well, he's obviously hopeless. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then, the next few things I started to do, I noticed again with Stephen Frears, for example, he was just so quiet. And then you discover, of course, what's going on. That John Schlesinger said to me when I directed the film Bright Young Things, and I called him up and asked for his advice. He said, "Well, my dear," he said, "you must remember the 3 phases of filmmaking. There's the pre-production, there's the principal photography, and there's the post." I said, "Now, you'll discover straight away that the pre-production, the casting, both of the actors and of your heads of department and even your prop buyers, is the most important part. Once that's done, you arrive on the set, the film is more or less completed. But of course, when you're on set, that's when you're the director. That's the most important part of it. When you're there talking to the actors and making sure that everything you want is in the can. And then there's the post-production, the most important part of filming. That's when the film gets made." And he was telling a severe and ridiculous self-contradictory truth that those 3 phases are each the most important part. They're each when the film gets made. I suppose really what he was saying, if you screw up one of them, the film gets ruined. So if you screw up the pre-production, if you haven't prepared yourself and you haven't got the right personnel around you and you haven't chosen the right locations and the right production design and cast, obviously, and you haven't done what rehearsal might need to be done or technical rehearsal and so on, if you haven't got that right, then the principal photography is going to be a nightmare. You'll get behind, you'll be slow, you'll be frustrated, you'll be angry with yourself for not preparing better. And if, of course, you don't get every shot you need and cover yourself properly and push it so that even if it's annoying to people, you have to have that other take, you have to do that other setup, then you'll regret it in the post, because you'll look and you'll think, "Oh God, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? Was I so lazy? Why did I think I didn't need that?" And so on and so on. And you can indeed build so much in that post, and that's, Tori and Matt will know exactly what I mean. Anyone who's made a movie will know that that's true. Those 3 parts. Being a director is really having to answer questions all the time, and that's the most frustrating part, because you're thinking about one thing and you're just really wondering, should this be a travelling shot? Should it be, whatever it might be, that some sort of issue in your head, and someone comes up and says. Someone from wardrobe says, "Oh, the wedding scene that we're doing next week, which hat for Julia's character? Do you think the yellow one or the blue one?" And you think, "Oh, for God's sake, does it matter?" And you go, the yellow one's fine. And then in the cutting room, you think, "Why did she wear that yellow hat? It's so distracting. It's really annoying." Or, "Why didn't I suggest the yellow hat? Then she could be picked out so much better from the crowd. As it is, they're all wearing blue hats and I can't see her properly, and I should have answered the question. I should have thought it through." Those are the things you want to tell anybody starting out as a director. All the grand stuff about crossing the line and, the technical business that people think is filmmaking, you can leave that to the camera operator and the director and the script supervisor. They know everything about crossing the line, and not everybody has a brain that is very good at translating 3D into 2D, because you forget when you get to the cutting room that the film is 2-dimensional, not 3-dimensional. But when you're on a set, it's 3-dimensional. So everything is left to right or right to left or up and down. There is no behind. Obviously there is behind. You get a sense of it. You can rack focus and things to suggest depth. But essentially, it's on a flat screen, like this screen here, flat. And the perception of depth is obviously important. But when it comes to all the technical stuff about which direction people look at, which is always so confusing when you're an actor, when you start out, because you're used to, almost all actors are trained for the stage first in Britain. Drama schools are better now at preparing them a little for film and TV, but generally speaking, it's fencing and Shakespeare and speeches. And speeches are theatre, because theatre is a rhetorical medium. Movies are not rhetorical. I mean, you can have speeches and people do talk, and sometimes the language is thrilling, but essentially it's about what you're looking at. It's so you arrive on the set your first day as an actor for something, and I'm in a film, I can't believe it, I've got a part. You've learnt your lines, and the first says, okay, well, we're going to have a line up, and the director goes, action, you go into your lines, like this. And everyone's staring at you, what the fuck is he doing? And it's just, whoa, calm down, just say the lines, don't worry about it like that. And you go, oh, okay, oh, sorry. And you've prepared things, you start to move, and they go, whoa, where are you going? And you've been in the hotel room overnight thinking, I'm going to stalk over here, I'll walk over. All that goes out the window. All you need to know is to have learnt your lines and to have thought about why you're saying them, why your character is saying them, and what they want out of the scene and all those sort of things. But otherwise, someone's going to put their hands on your shoulders and say, stand there. And someone's going to put some coloured tape on the floor and say, that's where you stand. And maybe another piece and say, that's where you move. And then they're suddenly saying, can you lead with your left shoulder as you walk across? And you go, what? Okay. And then they're saying, okay, and look here, we can't have see that yellow piece of gaffer tape on the matte box? That's your eye line. What do you mean it's my eye line? That's where you look when you talk to Caroline. She can't be behind the camera. There isn't room. There's all the lamps in the way. Whatever. So she'll do the voice, but don't look to her. She'll be over there. Don't look towards her. Just look there. And you go, okay. You start talking to them. Or then when you're behind giving your off lines, they keep moving you closer to the camera, and you think, but I was over there. And they go, no, it's your eye line. It's got to be really close. Just narrow it. And it's all that. And you think, what is this about? And it's only when you've ever been in a cutting room and you look that you think, oh, I get it. That's it. Because film scene is made up of the dynamic tension between eyes that meet each other. And when a character is alone on screen, in a shot, a single, in other words, and they're looking at the person they're talking to, the audience, which has been trained on watching movies since the invention of the genre and since D.W. Griffith and Eisenstein and others kind of defined the grammar and language of movies, that we know how to look, and filmmakers know how to make a conversation look as if it really is happening, even though the setups could have been hours apart and so on. And it's alive, and it's the eyes you look at. They've done tests on huge, if you do a huge scene like in the days of in the 50s when Cinerama and CinemaScope and these formats were trying to to battle with TV and to make cinema more exciting and huger. That's when they started doing huge landscapes. Bond movies always start with a great sort of huge sweeping shot of the bay, and it's fine and it's nice. Travelogue cinema is very interesting. You see the landscapes and it's all beautifully done. But the moment a human being walks on screen, all eyes go to that human being. Not just to the human being, but to that human being's eyes. And John Ford, for example, one of the greatest ever of the American film directors, an absolute genius. Even if you don't like westerns, and some people are put off by westerns, if you watch a few John Ford films, you'll see that the fact that they're westerns is, it's important to him and to John Wayne, Duke Wayne, as he was known. But there's so much more than that. There's something quite extraordinarily powerful and remarkable about them. And he was once asked by Michael Bogdanovich, who was this director himself, of course, and a hugely knowledgeable and fascinated film historian who died recently, in fact. But he was of the right age to interview, which he did on film, that the masters, and I'm afraid they were all masters, they were all male, of the golden age of Hollywood in terms of directors, in particular Howard Hawks and John Ford. And famously, John Ford would bat away and disavow any descriptions of him as an artist or a great creative maker, because he didn't like that he was very macho, as was Howard Hawks, and they kind of pretended that they didn't know what they were doing almost, but of course they did. But there's one moment which I think is what is so important for all filmmakers to know about, which is when Bogdanovich says to John Ford, he asks him a question about Monument Valley, which is this part of Arizona with these huge mesas, these towering rock formations in red sandstone. And he made, 11 or 12 movies there with Duke Wayne and Bogdanovich, in his nibbishy way, as we Jews say, is a slightly kind of nerdy way of talking, says, Mr. Ford, what is it about Monument Valley that so appealed to you? That the vastness of the landscape, is it something to do with mankind trying to imprint himself on the hugeness of nature? Is it just simply the beauty of what is there? Is it makes a backdrop? What is it about this landscape that so appealed to you? And there's a big pause, and Papa Ford says, "There's only one landscape that ever interested me: the Duke's face." and that's he did go and shoot out there, partly because it took him away from Hollywood and the suits who could control him from the various studios, so he could have his own little independent republic out miles and miles from Hollywood. But that's the truth of the matter. And you watch those movies and the scenery is amazing, and sometimes you stop to wonder about how they did those incredible traveling shots in cars alongside cavalry and horses and things like that, and how amazing his use of the camera is. But it is faces. It's people looking at each other.
Absolutely.
And that's what movies are about. It's the eye contact and the dynamism. When Stephen Campbell Moore played the lead in my film Bright Young Things, and the day came when he was going to spend his day with a scene with Peter O'Toole, a legendary great actor.
Yeah, and it's one of my favourite scenes in most films.
Yeah, and Stephen was a bit nervous, as you can imagine. I was reasonably nervous. I knew Peter, and he had accepted the part, and I was thrilled with that. And so on the morning, I took Stephen round to Peter's trailer and said, I want to introduce you to Stephen Campbell Moore. He said, let's come out into the light, darling, into the light. So he stepped out of the trailer and he faced Stephen and pointed at his eyes and said, look at me, look at me, look at me, hold the gaze. You'll do. Stephen indeed gave him a look back, and it's Peter Anderson.
How terrifying!
Isn't it? Terrifying but brilliant, because he said "you'll do," which is as great a compliment as you could ever give a fellow actor. But it meant you can look at me without being afraid. You can look into my eyes, and I see not. You know how it is with an eye. If you look at someone and you're just your eyes directed towards them, the person being looked at knows that the eye isn't seeing into their eye. They're just seeing onto the surface of it. And the camera sees that, more importantly. The camera can tell the difference between someone just sort of looking and someone actually looking, someone seeing. And it's not that the average cinema goer is able to articulate that. They just think, I didn't think they were very good, or I didn't believe them in that scene. You know? Sorry, incredibly long answer. I can't remember what the question was.
No, it's a fantastic answer. The camera doesn't lie, absolutely doesn't lie. And that's the thing. It's as directors, we sort of try to spot when actors may be lying or faking with those bits. I certainly do. I think that's really, really fascinating.
And sometimes, of course, it's even more complicated, because in a lot of movies, which are about human complexity, usually, you're filming an actor pretending to be someone who is themselves pretending. Because a lot of the characters you play lie.
Yeah.
Because they're murderers or thieves, or they've got some problem and they need to solve something, or they're being deceitful in some way that could be amusing or terrifying. So you've got to lie, but tell the truth about your lying. It's kind of really, and the best actors can do it, and when they do it, it's mysterious and wonderful that they can.
It's all the amazing convention of filmmaking. Like, we know that audiences know that when we're in a sort of a single, it's just one actor, that they're allowed to show us that they are lying, and that we know that the other character, unless it's in the script, is not going to pick that up as well. It's an amazing sort of symbiotic relationship almost with the camera, isn't it?
I was lucky enough to be very, very close friends towards the end of his life with the great Sir John Mills, who was a leading actor in Britain in the 50s and 60s in particular. He started in the 40s and in the war, actually, 39 almost. And he won an Oscar for his performance in Ryan's Daughter. And he could play, Cockney figures or officer class or things like that. There's some really great performances. The Power and the Glory with Alec Guinness. Tunes of Glory, I beg your pardon. With Alec Guinness is a particularly astonishing performance where he has a breakdown, which is terrifying. And he always... I remember a party he gave at his house in Denham, and there was another marvellous British actor there, Lionel Jeffries, who was a great comic actor with Peter Sellers in Two-Way Stretch and The Wrong Arm of the Law, played the Marquis of Queensberry in Peter Finch's Oscar Wilde movie. Most people remember him as Grandpa in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Right.
There we go.
Posh life for me. That one, that figure that. He was a fantastic actor. And I remember I followed Johnny into the kitchen or something to open some bottles of wine with him or whatever it was. And I said, God, it's such a pleasure to meet Lionel Jeffries. And Johnny said, yes, Lionel Jeffries, incapable of ever showing the wheels turning. A genius. And that was John's thing. If you could see the wheels turning, it all fell apart. You see the actors' wheels turning. You could see the characters' wheels turning, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
If you saw the actors, suddenly the mask slips and you see an actor acting or trying to act or trying to do something. We've all seen it. And it's extraordinary how sensitive... It's one of the most important truths about cinema, and it's very noticeable whenever you see interviews with really great directors like Alfred Hitchcock is a perfect example, is they talk about the audience almost more than they talk about the actors or the film crew, because that they're seeing it from that point of view. And of course, it was easier for them because their audience was always the same. It was a group of people sitting in the dark in a cinema. There was no other audience that a film could have in the early days. And Hitchcock always talked about them in the dark there. And it's worth remembering, and that's my point about seeing the wheels reel, that there is a skill to being in the audience. It's not a skill that you need to bring in terms of effort, but that the training that I mentioned earlier, that we've all had since earliest childhood in knowing how to watch movies and how to interpret character and how the music blends with it. The whole thing, we're used to something that only, my grandparents, certainly their parents, my great-grandparents certainly, if they were confronted with any kind of movie that we make now, they would be utterly unable to watch it. They'd be terrified for a start, of course, but they wouldn't make sense of it. They just simply wouldn't follow the story. It would be like, it's as if you'd thrown a jigsaw puzzle up in the air and said, there, what do you think of that as a picture? It isn't a picture. What are you talking about? What? Oh, well, they'd be utterly baffled. So we forget that we are literate in the ways of cinema, and filmmakers have to, I think, and actors understand that the audiences read character so well. And there's some instinct that the great film actor has that they know that, and so they don't have to try and project it. And that's the mistake that young actors who are not instinctive film actors and who may have been more used to the stage, that's the mistake they make, is they try and think, well, my job is to project a feeling. I'm supposed to show that I'm happy. I'm supposed to show that I'm angry. I'm supposed to, do this. And that's not what you do in real life. It's I'm sure you as director, you've often said to an actor, actually just say the line, don't try and force it, and just bring it down, And actors think, well, what do you want me for? Why, And yet, of course, despite the fact that you don't want actors to act, Milos Forman always used to say, someone somewhere on this film set is acting. Stop it at once.
I love that someone. I'm not going to point names or tell anyone. Just someone somewhere.
It's fan mail. It's fan mail. Sponsored by Soldo. So tell me, which famous person wrote to us this week?
A pretty big guy called Darth Vader. You may know him from the Star Wars films.
Oh yeah, he was the one who had breathing problems, wasn't he?
Yes, and ever since he's typecast as the baddie, and he really wants to do Cats in the West End, but no one takes him seriously.
He was always joking about that, but he sounds serious.
Yeah, and I think he would be great. He's got this deep, raspy voice that would be perfect for Cats.
Like a stuck fur ball.
And as we at the Filmmakers Podcast are the forefront of indie filmmaking, he has asked us for help. Can we help him, Charles?
Well, of course we can, because we use Soldo.
What's Soldo?
Well, Soldo is a payment solution that replaces petty cash given to employees or production assistants. You'll be able to track spending real-time, instantly transfer funds to all card holders for free, and establish budgets, rules, and much more.
Get 3 months for free using the promo code FilmmakersPod.
Oh, Darth, be careful. That hand Soldo can be a right handful.
Yeah, I heard he always shoots first.
As clumsy as he is stupid.
Sorry about that.
Apology accepted.
Just don't forget about us when you're destroying planets.
Yeah, we want to be a rising star, not a Death Star.
Do you think your experience as an actor did that when you were directing Bright Young Things, had that already sort of informed some of these ideas, or was it the directing? Because you were having to look at things from a different perspective change?
Yes, I mean it had, and of course I was so excited by the cast I'd assembled that I knew that how good they were, even ones who had not done it before, because that was an extraordinary experience. There were two parts in particular I was finding difficult to cast, and it so happened that on the fourth day of casting with video camera and trying to give everybody a chance to show how good they were and just not feeling they were right, I suddenly had these two young actors who had not really done anything. And I thought, this is like a joke. They're so perfect. And they were David Tennant and James McAvoy.
Yeah.
And Fenella Woolgar as well, actually. He was also the same day. He was brilliant as Agatha. And it just made me so happy. And when they arrived for the first day's rehearsal, which we did have a little rehearsal, they both said they were convinced that they hadn't got the part. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why is that? He was so good. He said, well, because we'd hardly opened our mouths before he said, great, thanks, goodbye. I said, oh, yes, well, that's true, because you were perfect. There was nothing I could need say to you. It's when people come and they're not right, you say, well, maybe you could try it this way, or maybe you could try it that way, and you have a half-hour session with them because you're trying to see if they can do it, and then you go, well, thanks very much, and you'll never think of them again. But someone who's perfect, you just go, great, right, off you go, thank you. See you.
And they're going home crying into their cereal.
Tony Hopkins told me his wonderful story about how he was cast in the 60s in that masterpiece of a film, Aaron Sorkin's favourite film. Apparently he watches it 10 times a year, The Lion in Winter. Do you know the film? It's a magnificent film with Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn in the lead roles. It's about Henry II, he is the lion, and he's in his castle at winter, and he's trying to work out the succession, who's going to follow him, and he has 3 sons. And Tony Hopkins is not well known to the public, but he's quite well known in the profession by this time. He's been Laurence Olivier's understudy and had to go on a few times at the Old Vic, and Peter O'Toole calls him to an audition, because Peter is producer as well as star of this movie. And he says, hello, Tony, lovely to see you, old boy. I says, now, 3 parts that might suit you. The Henry II, I'm playing him. That bitch, Hepburn, is playing my wife. Now, of my 3 sons, there's Geoffrey the bastard. There's Richard, who's queer. And there's John, who's a cunt. So have a read of each, darling. And so Tony Hopkins says, all right, yeah, no, thank you, yes, I'll have a read. And he has a read. And then there's a little pause, and Peter says, you're the queer, see you Monday. Right. That's the best piece of casting you can have. You're the queer, see you Monday. It's just fabulous, isn't it?
Brilliant.
And he is brilliant.
He is brilliant. You mentioned earlier about that, going up to actors and whispering, the directors you were like when you first started acting and seeing them reading a newspaper and slowly walk onto set. When you were doing Bright Young Things and when you weren't necessarily getting the performance or you wanted, or you could see the cogs turning, maybe you didn't at all, and everyone was amazing. How did did you balance that process of speaking to an actor and trying to get something out of them that you wanted? Because it's always very, very difficult.
Yeah. I found one of the things is that they were all, as actors usually are, very keen to be given notes. Actors like to hear. Obviously, the human level, they like to be praised. There was one scene where there were about 6 people in the scene, and we were doing it in one take, and it was like Jim Broadbent and Simon Callow and various others, and Simon Callow was at the end of the line, and I said to each of them, I said, "Brilliant, wonderful, fantastic, incredible," and then finally to Simon, "Unbelievable," and he looked at me and said, I don't think you should say to an actor that he's just been unbelievable. But no, so you would praise them. But then, I suppose you'd find little psychological tricks are very good, though you have to be very good at them because actors are pretty smart at winkling them out. And the most obvious one is allowing an actor to believe it's their idea. And actors will do the same to directors. So you'll say, as an actor, you often say to a director, "Do you remember you told me earlier that maybe I should do it this way? I think you were right." And then the director will go, "Okay, do it my way then." That is your idea. And similarly, you can do the same to actors. You can say, in an earlier rehearsal, you did it in such a way that ... I think that was a brilliant instinct. I'd try that again. And in fact, they didn't do that, but you wanted them to. But you allow them to own it, and then they'll feel much more confident about it, rather than trying to just repeat something that they've been told to do. But most actors, unfortunately, these were mostly young, and they were so on for it, and I could tease them into doing it. So that was shit. Let's do it well now, shall we? And they'd kind of laugh, and that would be funny. But no, it was. And sometimes you do. It is a thing that all the things you used to laugh at when you were young and very sensitive to what you thought was bullshit and pretension, you realise wasn't bullshit and pretension after all. Like actors saying, "What's my motive?" To which you go, "Your paycheck." Oh, no. Characters don't do things unless they have a reason for doing it. They're hungry, they're full of desire, they're full of hate, they're bored, that's why they do things. And if you're not sure as an actor, someone says, walk across the room now, you're thinking now, well, okay, I've been in situations where I suddenly walk across the room, but turning my back on someone's got, I've got to square it so I can just do it believably. And you find ways of helping actors with that sometimes. So you might, sometimes it is a scene with 2 people, and the hero and the heroine, if you can, use those phrases, and you might say to her, while you're ticking him off, you might suddenly just notice how beautiful his eyes are, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, I like that." Or they'll go, "Oh, I don't get it." Sometimes just things like that really work. And when you see a really, Emily Mortimer, for example, who played Nina in the film, is a wonderful actress. And, you'd say something like that, and then you'd see her suddenly hungrily looking at his eyes or something, oh yes, that really worked. And those are the sort of things actors can get a grip on, because it's practical, and they can see how that would, give us a sort of new direction to a scene and make it less of a, less obvious.
Did you adapt what you did as a director for different actors as well?
Yes, you do that. Again, I think one does that instinctively. You know the sensitivities of different people, or at least you presume to judge how some people don't like to be told what to do. There are, there are far fewer now than there used to be. I remember, this is a stage thing, but one of the first stage plays I did professionally was Alan Bennett's 40 Years On, and it was the first revival of it. It had originally been done in the 60s with Alec Guinness and Alan Bennett himself in the role that I was playing, and we had the same director, Patrick Garland, and he said that when Gielgud left the role after a year, I think, in it was a huge hit in the 60s. Emlyn Williams, the Welsh actor and writer who wrote How Green Was Mine, who wrote The Corn Is Green, which is on at the moment at the National. And he took over, and he was a rather grand sort of figure, Emlyn was. And Patrick was a little scared of him, unlike Gielgud, who's a much better known actor, who Gielgud could, and this was set in a school. Gielgud loved the fact that the boys were running around all the time. He was going, "Oh," and being, "Go away, boy," and all this sort of thing. And they would tease him, and they would pull at his gown, and he was perfect perfectly fine with that. But Emlyn Williams was kind of much more like, why are these boys they're too close? And at one point he had this line where, which was just, someone somewhere is smoking. It's you, boy, isn't it? And Wolfgang and me said, no, sir. And it turns out it's the schoolmaster. Actually, it's me, headmaster. Oh, very well. Anyway, he said, someone somewhere is smoking. It's you, boy, isn't it? And Patrick said, well, maybe that was just a little too frightening, rather than it's just like that. And there was a huge pause, and Emlyn Williams drew himself up to his full height and said, oh, Patrick, I hope you're not telling me how to play comedy. And that, what can you do as a director after you've heard that? That's just the end of it, isn't it? And, we do and on film sets, you do occasionally hear stories of actors and stars who say that. Stars is an interesting one. I've done a few films where there have been, big movie stars. I did a movie with John Travolta, for example, when he was at the absolute height of his Pulp Fiction renaissance, where he'd risen again. And he was being paid $21 million for this movie. Wow. The $1 million at the end of it was because Jim Carrey had been paid $20 million, which is the most anyone had ever been paid for a film. Right. So Travolta's manager decided he would get an extra $1 million on top of that to prove the value of. So he was a really big star at this stage. But also in the film, which was called A Civil Action, there was like Bill Macy, William H. Macy, John Lithgow, Robert Duvall, Kathy Bates, James Gandolfini, Tony Shalhoub. It was an amazing cast. It was really fantastic. And I was just like a pig in Chardonnay, surrounded by these, and we would sit and gossip. So with Kathy and Bill Macy and Bob Duvall and Duvall, as they call him, and John Lithgow, as they say, we would sit around and sometimes JT, as John Travolta was called, would come and sort of hang around with us like that. But most of the time he was in his trailer and looking utterly miserable. And I remember saying to Bob Duvall, I said, why do you think JT's so sort of miserable most of the time? And he comes up and he looks at us rather hungrily, like a dog who wants to be fed and then mooches off again. And Bob Duvall said, why do you think you're in this movie, Stephen? And I said, well, I guess the producers and the director wanted me to be in it. He said, yeah. He said, that's why I'm in it. All of us guys, we're in this movie because the director and the producer wanted us to be in it. JT's in it because the studio wanted him to be in it. He's a financial chip. He's not an actor. He sees us chatting and laughing because there's no pressure on us. If this movie tanks, no one's going to say, oh, that Robert Duvall, he can no longer act. But they might say that JT can no longer prop up a movie. And his stock goes down.
Yeah, wow. That's a really interesting point.
It is an interesting point. And that's, had the same experience to a film with Walter Matthau, who was telling me about the people he said, I never worked with a star who was happy. He said, he worked with Elvis Presley and Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, you name it. He worked with them, and he said they were all miserable.
Just a huge amount of pressure,
vast amount of pressure.
Yeah, which sort of slightly touches on, I guess, mental health within the industry. And obviously, you're a huge advocate and supporter of mental health charities. And do you mind talking a little bit, Stephen, about that within the industry?
Yeah, I think actors, of course, live raw lives emotionally than others, in as much as they're often asked to play roles that might well be picking at their own scabs, as it were. I mean, that, and sometimes you can't but believe that the particular skill or gift that makes someone a fine film actor in all ranges of is almost a dangerous gift that very few great film actors are likely to be normal. And so there's the star, and we've talked about the pressures on them, but then there's the great actor too, and so often they have to go to places and inspect parts of their personality. I mean, there are people who, they've got a scene where they have to weep so uncontrollably, or they have to lose
hard
their
to do
temper.
that. It's painful.
And sometimes it's done so realistically that it frightens people on the set, because you think, my God, what's this person accessed in themselves? So there is obviously in that sense, but then actors and creatives are more likely to be open about things. They've traditionally been more open about their sexuality, if it's been necessary, and about their mental health. But, I've noticed that in the days since I've been open about my own mental health issues, that on film sets, and quite often it will be someone from a totally different department in the filming, a grip or an electrician or something, who might sidle up to me and go, "Oh, I really like that film you made about, because I have this." And they'll talk about their mental health problems, and you'll realise, of course, that it's much harder for them, really, because they're not in. I mean, they are in a creative job, but they're not taught somehow to think of it. They're called technical rather than creative, and they tend, to come from a different world and to speak a different language, or to have been brought up speaking a different language. And so it's very important to remember that, that the intensity of the workspace that is the film unit is something that needs to be considered. And we're now aware of the dark history of sexual predation and bullying and unkindness and all these, different behaviours that have plagued film sets because of the power play inside them.
I was going to say, and there's that sort of hierarchical
sense. It is long reflected in Britain. It reflected the army, and you had an officer class, which was the director and some of the heads of department and the actors, and you had the warrant officers, as they're called in the army, i.e. the ones, the NCOs, the non-commissioned officers, the equivalent of corporal and sergeant, who are the ADs, who actually, it's very revealing that on British sets, they nearly always call actors sir and madam. We'll be ready for you in 10 minutes, sir. Or they'll call the director, they'll call them sir or madam. And there is still that sense. And then, the rest are the ordinary private soldiers. And that's been the structure in a film set for a long time. And, there have been directors who've tried to overcome that. But the important thing now is to remember, is not just the social equality side of it and the reduction of this idea of power over other people, that, that a director is allowed to insult people or lose his temper or massage their shoulders without asking, or any of those sort of things that used to happen. And I think people now understand that, and also the intimacy issues in certain scenes, and how important it is that everyone's at ease with that, and all of those things are looked at. But it's also true that that people should feel, just as there is usually on larger film sets, there's a nurse or someone medically qualified to deal with accidents and things that might arise. That also, at the earliest days of filming, people are made to feel aware that if they feel they have a deep, sort of problem that is affecting their work and their fulfillment and their sense of themselves, that they should be free to be able to go to someone to talk about it.
Do you think we can do more on film sets and in the film industry about it? Do we have a therapist on set? Do you think that is the way forward to help?
I think that's a possible way. I mean, I think one of the things you can do, and that a director and producer together can formulate, because, as you know, in the early part of filming, there are a lot of planning meetings where the heads of department get together. And one of the questions you can ask to all the different heads of department is, what do you think we should do to make this a really happy and cheerful set, where everybody feels confident in their own roles and in speaking out if they're not, either on work practices or in just terms of mental health and other such issues. And you can say what people think. Do you think we should ask for a therapist to be available? Should we have a place for people to go? And I remember laughing when my friend Huw told me that on the first day of shooting of Sense and Sensibility, Ang Lee had a little ceremony, a Shinto or Buddhist, I'm not sure which it was, but it was a sort of ceremony that involved a sort of beautiful copper bowl and smoke and chanting and things like this. It was to bless the production, and he wanted everyone to be around and hold hands for it like that. And of course, you happened to be holding hands with the dolly grip, who said, "Is this going to happen at the beginning of every day?" You said, "No, I think it's just for the first day." But, I mean, that sort of thing, can so easily be laughed at as pretentious, but actually it does, it is a binding thing. It binds people together. Yeah. Because as we all know, the experience of being on a film set is an immensely team building feel. It has this this closeness you can get, the speed with which running jokes and little catchphrases develop that are just good for that movie and so on, and the more that's encouraged, I think, and the more cheerful the atmosphere, the better. And that also means there can come a time when the director can be confident to say, "Now look, everybody, this scene, it may seem very ordinary, this scene, but actually it's kind of the emotional heart of it. So I'd really appreciate if everybody concentrates to their maximum and lets the actors try different things," or whatever. There might be that, because some scenes really are, you just come through the door and sit down and they're just technical, and some do. And you can't expect everyone on set to have read the script. As the operator doesn't even. They print. They cut out bits of the call sheet and stuck it to what used to be the magazine of the camera. And which has got the names of the actors on it. Some of the old-fashioned ones call the actors mum and dad, whatever their age is. The males are mum and the males are dad and the females are mum. Yeah, could you? And they'll say, "Mum, could you just move slightly to the left?" And dad, which is baffling.
But again, it's that sense of kind of family, isn't it? That, which is kind of it's really lovely, because it is it can be a very stressful, very pressurized situation.
Because the clock is always ticking. I mean, the important thing to remember, of course, is unless you've got a very unusual film that's being shot all in one place, or more or less in one place, the chances are that where you're shooting that day is not available tomorrow. And it might, and if it's daylight dependent, the clock is ticking even more loudly in everyone's heads. So there is tension, which is not just to do with the emotion and the things, and sometimes the complicated stunt actions have to be performed and things like that. So it always goes better when everybody's on good terms with each other.
Always. And having that little conversation.
And everyone feels included.
Absolutely. And having those little conversations at the start of every day. This is what we want to do today. Because like you say, you think everyone's read the script. You think everyone knows it as well as you do, and they don't. And as soon as you get your head around that, you go, "Oh, I need to tell people what scenes we're doing." They just turn up and go, "Sorry, here the sides are doing what? Oh God, I've got to light something. I haven't got time to look at this," which is incredible. We're huge fans, all of us, as Bright Young Things, and it amazed me when I found out you hadn't directed again after this. And you do mention it in Matt and Tori's brilliant book.
Yes,
Full to the Brim, Fizz and Ginger. But it was something that was like, oh, that's really interesting, because it seems like the way you're talking, you love working with actors.
I do, and I'd love to do it again. I do think a film set is one of the happiest and most remarkable places to be in the world that I've ever experienced. I'm always thrilled to be there, and I just love it. I love touching the light stands.
Don't touch that, Stephen.
I know. I just love it.
You're a born director, that's the thing.
Yeah, I know. I think the reason is time, to be honest, because I love writing so much, and because I love acting and performing in different ways so much. Directing is, especially in Britain, as you, Tori, will know, and you'll know, is a lot of it is pounding the pavements of Soho, having meetings, trying to raise the finance. Every film is as I used to call it in the days when there were such things, is a new checkbook. In other words, you pay people out of this movie AC number one, the account, whereas in America, you notice that the checks are Paramount Pictures Corporation, that they have a continuity of financing. Every movie is a new financial structure. There's this business of the people putting their money in last so they can take it out first, and these kind of games people play with it's I was not put on this earth to be able to read a budget or a spreadsheet or a schedule even. And, I'm just hopeless at that side of it. But, if you've got a great line producer and a great, an experienced production team generally, then, that they look after that side of things. But you still get taken out to the meetings for months ahead of the film getting any kind of a green light. And so there's like 3 months of prep and 3 months, of shooting and 3 months of post or some variation of that kind of time, which is the best part of a year. And then there's all the publicity and everything. So I'm not suggesting I'll never make another movie again, but I guess if I did, I'd probably have to have an idea for it and think, I want to direct that. I've been offered some wonderful scripts and I've loved them and thought, gosh, that's good. But is it, do I want to take a year out of my life to do that?
Well, if you ever need a hand, we're all here to help.
No, throw that way.
Another Evelyn War would be
that's
great.
a nice thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. A final bit of advice then for actors and filmmakers that you've gleaned from your years of making films, being in them, starring in them, and actually being an all-round legend.
Golly. Well, usually actors deflect this by saying, check your flies and don't bump into the furniture is the best advice.
Indeed, yes.
And of course that's true. But I suppose I like to quote the Oasis album when I arrive on a film set sometimes and say to both the AD and the director, what's the story, Morning Glory? So I need to know from the AD what the story is, i.e. the AD, she'll say, or he'll say, well, we hope to do the 28A before lunch. We really want to get that done before lunch. Ideally, then, we'd be slightly on the move and go into the next stage to do that. We should have done that by 3, and you'll be clear by 4. So then that's the story of the shoot and what you're likely to do. So you can get your head around that and feel, okay, how to conserve your energy, or at least build up to the various moments. And then to the director and the script supervisor, you're saying, what's the story, Morning Glory? Meaning, what is the story as far away? What happened before this scene, what happens after it. Obviously, from looking at the script, but you'll know by this time the director has got their own story in their head as far as the cutting is concerned. So it's just being aware of the story. I mean, I'm not a method actor, and some method actors would say, well, the actor shouldn't know more than their character knows, but that's simply impossible. Even the most methody actor has read the script, so they know they're going to die tomorrow in their character, or they know that they're lying when they're saying, that someone is lying when they say something to them. They know so. But it is important to remind yourself of what the director feels the story's doing. So, that's what I'd say. What's the story, Morning Glory?
Amazing. Stephen Fry, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Such a delight. And fizz and ginger to us all.
Indeed.
Good luck with your next project, Tori and Matt. I can't wait. You're wonderful filmmakers yourselves. And yes. I suppose I'd also say to someone listening who wants to go on the production side and make films from that point of view, is the purpose of making a film and making it a success is to be able to make another one. It's not to become famous. It's not to make a huge amount of money. That won't happen in filmmaking unless something extraordinary happens that you can't really plan for. But what you can plan for is to make the film good enough and liked enough and possibly just breaking even enough plus more so that you can make another one and then another and then another. That's what all filmmakers will tell you, even if they're Steven Spielberg, it doesn't matter. That's what they want to do, is to be able to make their next film.
That's the dream. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Remember, you can go out there and make your film. You can act in them. You can star in them. You can learn from all of this. You can go and make your TV and film, just as Stephen Fry has done. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well,
it is your duty
to send the elevator back down. Ping, ping.
You take care. Have a wonderful day. All the best to you.
Real pleasure. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
All the best. Bye-bye.
If you enjoy the Filmmakers podcast, please consider supporting us on Patreon.